Okay, I'm Andrew Stuck. I'm one of the founders of the Urban Tree Festival. And we started the writing competition this year, early in February, without any funding. And we had to structure it on the basis that the competition in this event would be what we call cost zero. And then we were really lucky. We got some funding from the Mayor of London. So whoopee to the Mayor of London. And the funding has enabled us to create a really super duper prize, which is the winner will have their own chapbook published by Samson Lowe and edited by Rebecca Latin Rawstrone. So that's the sort of super duper prize. And we have to thank the Mayor of London for making that possible. So that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, the judges, they all worked tirelessly and they all were volunteers. So, you know, that's the key thing. These people are volunteers and the majority of the festival is run by volunteers. So, you know, a big shout out for everyone involved there. We had 120 entries. Over 120 entries, and we've ended up with 16 delightful pieces in the Canopy anthology. And you're going to hear from almost all the authors from that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Arji Manuelpillai, who is going to be our MC for the day. Thank you very much, Arji.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Give us a wave out there in the ether of Zoom. My name is Arji Manuelpillai. In the background, you might hear my newborn baby. But don't worry, because my newborn baby loves poetry and loves writing of all sorts. I'm really excited to be here because it's a coming together of poets as well as short story writers. It's a coming together of fans of that. And it's also all about the people who have invested in this amazing book. But before I talk about that book, Andrew has told me to do that thing that hosts often do, which is read their own work to open up an event. I won't keep you very long. Andrew said to me, oh, can you come up with, is there any poems you've got about trees? And the closest I got was a poem called Monkey. And it goes like this: Monkey. Look at me flying through the window so the whole pub screams, smashing the bottles off the back of the bar, scattering pork scratchings on your good old days. Look at me, death staring that small child while I yank off the dartboard, frisbee it at the wisecrack just out the toilet, climbing the walls, then sliding my rouge balls up and down the length of the TV so everyone can see these scarlet arse cheeks, so the pixelated Harry Kane makes that fingers on plate sound. Look at me bowling pool balls at old folks with older jokes about onion bargees, spearing the pool stick into your bulldog's butt, saying no, I will not keep calm and carry on. I'll rip the flag from the wall, swing circles on the chandelier mane in wind, voice echoing with that joyful mantra of brown boys in the countryside. Thank you so much, everybody. Nice to see clapping hands. We can't hear noise, so we'll just imagine it, which is what it's all about. I am here to celebrate this amazing book. It's got amazing illustrations. Give us a wave if you've got it. If you haven't got it, perhaps you could think about getting it soon. It's got a load of great poems in it, some great fiction in it, and it's a real pleasure as this anthology is published to coincide with the Urban Tree Festival in May 2021. During the pandemic, trees came into our lives in a completely different way because we couldn't touch humans, but we loved trees. I'm going to invite you now to make a group poem, all of us together, and it's going to have the line, I love trees because. You're going to tell me why you love trees so much. I love trees because. Put it in the chat window while I'm talking. I love trees because they make me feel whole again. I love trees because they live in my heart and they grow through my hands. Let us know why you love trees. I love trees because they are my ancestors. I love that. They are always forgiving. They are still and connect me to silence. They are outlive us, all of us. I love trees because they know how to breathe. Yeah, they do know how to breathe. Photosynthesis. They are shade. They have strong roots. They are still there. Their shade they cast. They're bigger than all of us, always. I love trees because they make a landscape look more beautiful. Because the heartwood sings with, and to me, in each seasonal turn, the life they hold makes me feel alive. They connect everything. This is so true. And just like that, we connect all of you into one long piece of literature. Today, this book invited people to send in their feelings, to submit a poem or a flash writing piece of 250 words about trees close to you, which I thought was a beautiful sentiment. So really, there's some sadness because we've lost people, we've had a difficult year, but there's some celebration as well because it's a celebration of all things that grow. And one thing that'll probably outlive all of us are all the trees that make up our parks, that make up the great British countryside. The winning poems were judged by Dr. Samantha Walton, who's a reader in modern literature at Bath Spa University, Ghazal Mozadek, who's a founder of a press, Pamena Press, an independent cross-cultural multilingual publisher. She's here somewhere. Give us a wave, perhaps. Nice to see you. The winning stories were judged by N.G. Bristow, screenwriter, director, installation artist, and Rebecca Latin Warstone, who was also the editor on this amazing little book. Rebecca, are you there now? Oh, hi, Rebecca. How was it, Rebecca, putting this together, this little book?
It was lovely. I think, as you've pointed out already, we've connected so much to nature. So we had a wealth of different stories and, things to read. So it was really a joy to put this one together, and there was very little editing required. You were all amazing writers.
What was the process of placing them in the right order? Because that's often the bit that I find quite scary.
Yeah, that's tricky. So that was a combination of thinking about how things flow and mixing up the stories with the poetry, but also thinking about the images as well. So kind of having a bit of a conversation with Alban, who made the images, and figuring out which ones would go where. And yeah, so it was a bit of trial and error, but I think it looks great. So I hope you all agree it turned out very beautifully.
Yeah, it's a real achievement to put something like this, and especially like Andrew was saying, to run this whole festival on volunteers. I mean, it's what I love about poetry and flash fiction is we're a small community, but it's a community with a lot of heart. And what's more important than that? And speaking of heart, we're going to move on to the first reader. The first reader is an archaeologist who lives in Worcester with her partner and a hell of a lot of books and a horde of mice in the wainscoting. Don't know what a wainscoting is, but I'm sure we're going to find out, because put your hands together for E.E. Rhodes.
Hello, Arji, thank you so much. The wainscoting is just the panels around us.
Okay,
so
great.
I'm E.E. or L or Electra, whichever you know me by. I'm going to very briefly say something about what inspired the piece. It starts with some Welsh. It was written when I was in Cardiff. We spent the first 6 months of lockdown in Cardiff, where we normally live. We moved into England for lockdown so that I could see my father, so we weren't negotiating two countries' rules. So this was based from my window in the top of the house in Cardiff, and we can see 6 half trees all decapitated. So I won't say any more about it. That's enough. And so there's a tiny bit of Welsh, but I'll explain what that means at the beginning. Dod yn ôl at fy goed. Welsh, literally, to come back to my trees. but meaning to find balance or to return to a calm state of mind. From the attic frost window, I see half of 6 trees. A sprig of green, bright against thistled slate, crumbled brick, and the thick mercury of windows, whispering me outdoors in a leaf-lined silence. Dodonol at Vingoid. I press my face to the glass that divides us, hoping and hoping for a close to the gritted separation, waiting for the trickled promise of walking green. On the streets and in the leaves, I hear Dodonol at Vingoid. In winter, a stick of punctuation, an exclamation in the sky. In spring, just a promise, a beginning, try anew. In summer, a crown, a stilt-lofted panoply, a corona of joy. In autumn, a falling, soft limb-fruited, or prickle sweet nut lean. In the seasonal itch, I watch from the window, looking for 6 half-trees who are bright calling me home. At the end of this year, I will come back to my trees. Dodonol at Vingoid. Back to my trees and a balance and calm.
Thank you so much. That was really, really exciting. I shied away from butchering the Welsh name, but it was Dodignol at Fing. What's the last bit?
You elide the 2 words, so it's Vingoid.
Fingoid. Okay, that's okay. Dodignol at Fingoid.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure, and what a great way to open up proceedings. We're going to lead into another story this time from a lawyer, an aspiring writer, and a part-time frazzled mother. And having become a father recently, I can relate. Sometime Londoner returned to her rural roots and now often found outside with a double espresso talking to hens. It is, of course, Sarah Wheeler. Sarah, are you in the house?
I'm in the house now, yeah.
Okay, nice to see you, Sarah.
Hi. Just say a couple of things about the piece I've written, where the inspiration came from. There's a sort of area of, I say a field, it's really an area of scrub where we live, and it's very overgrown. And it's attracted a lot of attention from would-be developers, and there's kind of split opinion in the village really, whether it's a mess and needs clearing up or whether it's a wildlife haven. So that's kind of what inspired me to write it. It's called My Blackthorn is a Tree. It's not a tree. Other half is adamant. It's a bush. Wiki proves unhelpful. Height and girth, it seems, only get you so far. Defining tree is a complicated matter. Other half thinks he's clinched it though, courtesy of Alan Sibley, a dendrologist he's just met on Google. If you can walk under it, it's a tree. If you have to walk around it, it's a shrub. He points at Blackthorn, barely distinguishable from the rampant undergrowth, and laughs. A little too hard. Try walking under that. Difficult, I admit. In winter, Blackthorn looks more like a badly constructed bonfire than a tree. Unlike solitary oak, regal even when naked, or serpentine yew curled around a rusty stake in the churchyard. Both silent witnesses of history, and both undisputedly trees. Refashioned, Blackthorn never became a ship's beam, nor curved into a bow, pierced any hearts at Agincourt. A remnant of ancient hedge, it squats in a no man's land of scrub and brambles, a guest who's outstayed his welcome. It's Blackthorn, though, which greets me every morning, marking the passage of my year. Pinhead blossom merging with the vestiges of frost, branches heavy with a surfeit of berries as summer wanes, then velveteen sloes, bittersweet with the promise of winter firesides and woody gin. Why does it matter anyway? Other half asks after 60 seconds of stony silence. I don't know, unable to articulate how deeply Blackthorn roots me to this place. I shrug, it just does.
Thank you so much. So what's happened to that area? Does that area changed over the last 3 months? The area that you were talking, the story was based on?
It's still pretty much the same. It's green now, much more green, but it's still really sort of slightly wild.
Yeah, there seems to be a movement towards. I really like the wild look myself, but a lot of people disagree. I really loved all the imagery in your piece, and I think it's something that I appreciate living in the city. There's nothing harder for me than writing about the countryside because it's not a vocabulary that I use a lot, whereas talking about people and the city comes much more natural to me. Speaking of natural poets, the next poet is an award-winning children's author and poet, and she has worked and has been published in anthologies and in literary magazines. She's going to present a piece called Urban Beech Tree 2. Sounds like the sequel, and it's Sandra Horn. Sandra, how are you doing?
Fine. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I
think
can hear
I'm
you fine.
unmuted. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I can see the inspiration for my poem straight out of the window in front of me. When we moved here, which is getting on for 40 years ago, it was a sorry looking thing, like a load of sticks. But actually, it needs patience because the sticks gradually green up and very quickly turn a lovely russety red. And every year it's in its glory at about this time of the year. And it shades us from the road. We live in the city on a very busy road. Traffic never stops. But between us and all that rubbish, there's this beautiful tree, like a dancing screen of leaves. And I love it. So here's my poem, Urban Beech Tree 2. I wonder who it was, what they were thinking when they planted you, a forest giant by a city road. You were a stripling then, an ornament for this suburban plot. With time, you'd overtop the wall and charm the passers-by in spring with soft green leaves, and later autumn reds. Was that how it was meant to be? That wall went long ago, nudged over by your swelling trunk, your mounded roots, and still you grew and stretched over the pavement, garden, and the road. An inconvenience, shedding your leaves and twigs where buses stop. Pollarders were summoned in to tame you, maim you. Look at you now, your branches locked to ugly flat-topped stumps. Last year's dead leaves a coat of rags and tatters. Concrete plugs your rotted heart. You might be dying, dead. But every naked twig bears promises of spring. Soon you'll be crowned with downy leaves, soft green to amber, copper, ruby red, to swathe your sorry amputated limbs. I've watched you now for 30 years or more, marveled at how in winter nakedness your upswept branches hold on to the light, an auspice of your surge of stubborn life. That's my poem.
Wow, that was brilliant, Sandra. Such beautiful imagery. Is there another poem like Urban Beech Tree 1?
Yes, there's a shorter version.
I thought it was, so is there 3? Is there a series of Urban Beech Trees that
No,
we can...
just 2 about this tree.
Oh, that's so lovely.
I write about trees quite a lot.
Okay, yeah. It's really interesting, and it's lovely that it was by a road. I love that idea of it coming through the pavement like that. When the pavement goes up slightly, really caught that. So lovely.
Yes. And
Thank you.
nudging the wall over was pretty spectacular, I have to say.
Yeah, I bet. They become part of our communities, really good trees. and the essence of our memories. When we think back to places, we often connect them to trees, which is what makes this competition and that booklet so sweet. We're going to another storyteller who's a writer and editor based in London. Spends his time thinking about the future. Wow, he's thinking about the future all the time, this guy. He's exciting. He finds that exciting and terrifying all at the same time, which I think he shares with most of us in this place. It's Gabriel Burrow. Gabriel, how are you doing?
Hi, Arji, I'm very well. Yeah, unlike Sandra, I don't actually spend that much of my time writing about trees. I spend my time often writing about other things.
Yeah, that might be a city thing, eh?
It is a bit of a city thing, but actually, this brief for the festival was one that just invited you to consider what was going on around you. And I think I, like a lot of people, was cooped up in sort of various rooms in The Hague for a bit and then in London. And a lot of people around me were sort of looking at how they could make those spaces more interesting, how they could bring plants into their home, and how, although it was really isolating to be boxed up, actually that was something that could bring people together. So that's what I'm writing about really in this story.
Thanks, Gabriel. Let's hear it.
Wonderful. Let's do it. So this is called Bonsai. My eyes scan the pavement below, glum chin resting on the palm of my hand. When the street is lined with nothing but cars, fat metal slugs that jostle with one another, your inside has to become a kind of outside. You welcome nature in. For me, that means this clutch of wood that stretches across the desk beside me, its leaves cut into a delicate canopy. Everything scaled down to fit the box we inhabit. We face the window, watching fingers of sun stretch out from behind clouds. Sunlight and water, that's what we both need. Every break, every breathless Pomodoro, I make a tea and it gets a spray of water vapor. Tea, spray, tea, spray. I've seen an aunt do it with houseplants and figure this tree will want the same. I hope I'm right. If it chokes on the mist, roots clogged with the dizzy drip feed of moisture, then I'll be left alone. No, the bonsai's going to thrive. No more cutting back its branches. I'll open the window so it can wind its way out of the room, resolute like a weather vane, like a satellite aerial receiving Netflix and an overabundance of chill. Following its possible path, something catches my eye. Another window and another well-watered pot with something green in it. And another, peeling out from behind cigarette-stained curtains. Another. Hundreds of windows with hundreds of tiny trees, Chinese money plants, monkey mask monsteras, and boat lilies. Between us, we have an entire garden.
Well done, Gabriel.
Thank you, Arji.
Such a pleasure. And actually, someone put just before you started, Caroline said, trees live longer than us, so surely we're part of their community. And I think that really tied in with your poem. Do you actually have a bonsai tree?
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing because I've started growing one, but it takes ages. So
it's not like Karate Kid.
Of one winding out of the window, I think that would probably defeat the purpose of a bonsai, and it would probably take a while. But I am in the process of growing one. Yeah.
That's good, because you should never let the truth get in the way of a good poem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Gabriel. We're moving to a poet who's published 5 poetry collections. The latest is coming in May 2021, so it should be out right now, I believe. So then maybe there's a link we could throw in there. It's called The Museum of Everything, and it's under Seren. Actually, this person also works at the BBC as head of BBC History, which must come in useful for the poetry. This poem is called The Things I Learned from the Copper Beach, and it's calling in Robert Seater. Hi, Robert.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
How are you keeping? Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm fine. Thank you so much. It's lovely being here. And this is your second beech tree poem. This is following on from Sandra's lovely poem. And it's also an urban tree. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. It's about the tree I grew up with outside my suburban childhood window, the tree that helped shape who I was and who I became. So here's Things I Learned from the Copper Beach. The the beaten metal look of light, especially against the gas blue October sky, and the sound that flare of gas made in the kitchen below my bedroom, the unseeable world. The window frames, full of it, day and night, the gallery of seasons. Come again, it said, you have a loyalty card for looking. The sound of its leaves in layers at night, its multiple whispers. Perhaps I learned a bleakness there, or followed its voices down a long wooden floored corridor. Remember school days? Full of those. And the defining moment when you walk down one of them, finally as yourself. The ragged, massy silhouette of it. A mountain casting a protective shadow on my bed, my room. But once, a branch of it made the moving shape of a burglar on our roof. So I woke my father in the middle of the night. He switched on the light, gave the space corners. Is that where fear goes? The constancy of it, the need to clasp it, arms around, love in all its concentric rings, time's tangible heartwood. And the message now, from a single leaf of it, copper bright, on a later lawn of a different house, reminding me of the sap of me, all the way back to who I was then, that metal, that blue, the shining, lit up world.
Magical. Thank you so much, Robert. The sap of us. I loved it. I loved so much of what you did there. Is your book out then now?
It's actually coming out next month, but it's available now. Yeah, it's been a bit delayed because of the pandemic, but yeah, out next month, I hope, fingers crossed.
Great, and they could probably pick it up from the Seren website, eh?
Yeah, it's on the Seren website now, yeah, or on Amazon, dare I say it.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Ari.
Brilliant. People being published. We've got all different types of poets and writers in here. It's such a pleasure to bring everybody together. We're going to introduce a Sheffield-based writer of short fiction and poetry. It is Sarah Macpherson.
Hi.
Hi, Sarah.
So, Sheffield is an incredibly green city, if you've never been there. It's got loads of green spaces, not just parks, but woodland, and it's right on the edge of the Peak District. So there's lots and lots of green space. And I do write about, well, trees and other green places quite a lot in a lot of my writing. This particular poem I wrote probably around this time last year, maybe a month or two later, after going for a walk in one of those spaces that's very close to my house. So it's kind of inspired by that boundary between the urban and the green spaces, and how you can get lost in them, but still the urban is right there. So that's kind of where this is coming from. Beyond the margins. Escape to green space. Take the path through the fence, off the estate with its graffitied shoebox homes piled one on the other. Past the skeleton of an off-road bike, burnt and rusting in the crook of two blackened logs, and skirt around the husk of a car that wasn't here the last time. Ignore these, go deeper, beyond the margins until all you can see is tree. The silence of the leaves drowns the drone of traffic on the edge of hearing. Move slower, down, then up, then down. Take the overgrown path through to where the valley drops away, and come out into open field, dotted with forgotten remnants of council care, hawthorn, apple, ornamental maple tangled in rosebay and bramble and tall grass gone to seed. Turn away from shouts and barking dogs that put at risk the frail conceit that this is more than an oasis in a brick desert, and keep your peace.
Very beautiful, Sarah. But would you say, is that your local park, or is that just a park that you were describing there?
It's a sort of, it's a couple of different connected kind of green wooded spaces they're more kind of wilderness areas really, but than parks per se. But yeah.
Do you think, like, if I asked you, like, oh, what's your favorite tree in the whole world, do you think you would have one, or you're not really sure?
I don't know about a favorite individual tree.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and I'm inviting people, like, generally to put in the chat window a park or a green area that there is their favorite and local to them, just so that we can see where we're based across the country. What's yours, Sarah?
I can't actually remember what kind of tree it is, but in that woodland that walk was through, there's a really, it might be a hawthorn, a really gnarled, twisted, interesting shaped one that I'm quite fond of.
That's beautiful. Westwood Park, South London, and it's coming soon. Victoria Park in East, and Wanstead Park. Greenwich Park is really nice. It's lovely because you got a great view. There's trees in streets. Caroline's right. There is trees in streets. I don't know whether I would remember a specific one. Cycle paths. You mean the trees running down cycle paths, I guess. And some streets are beautiful, especially in North London, for trees. Bagley Wood, Knoll Park, Nightingale Valley, the Avenue of Cherry Blossom in Westgate-on-Sea. We are actually blessed in England for the different types of green spaces we have. And that's what's great about this book, is actually is celebrating that, which is really important. And celebrating the act of walking. Peckham Rye, that's right near me. Scotland is a great place for it. The Great North Wood in South London, I do know it actually. Crystal Palace, a beautiful spot, and again you get great views across there. Speaking of great views, we're going to move to an amazing writer called Alison Clarke, who wrote a story called The Potted Tree, but she's decided to pass over. She's a freelance designer who enjoys writing and loves a map, but she's decided to run her finger across that map to her friend Mel Sutton, who's going to be sharing the story for her. Mel, thanks for coming in and reading this poem or story.
The Potted Tree by Alison Clarke. I knew I would miss the woodland, the red squirrels, the wooden acorn, the hide, the smell of pine needles, and the evoked memories of camping in the hot sun from many years ago. But I had you. I remember wanting you, researching, planning and thinking about you, but not buying you or planting you or the day that you arrived. The blur of that time means memories are fragments, tiny pieces of hope in amongst scans, surgery and a much wanted recovery. I have kept you potted and close by for the last year, allowing myself to see your tight, wispy, dusty red blooms as a marker of hope for when I can explore the woodland again. I needed that connection between outside and in, not actually realizing this was a metaphor for everything that was happening then and now. You survived the constant rain, ice, snow, ice, rain, and snow when others did not. And now the spring has come again, full circle, the rhythms of life continuing, a reminder of how things can be and maybe once were. So perhaps it is time for you to be in the ground, to give the same cyclical hope to others as we both emerge beyond the patio. A witch hazel for all to admire, yet containing the secrets of those lost days.
That was a piece by Alison Clark, read really beautifully by Mel Sutton. Thank you, Mel, for doing that. I really appreciate it. What a joy. And actually, it really connected me with the idea, like, we draw lines between flash fiction and poetry, but actually they're connected in so many different ways. And that really felt like a prose poem in itself, and really enjoyable to listen to. We were talking about great trees. The pine tree in Florida, Chris, is a very special tree. The orchard in Somerset, 100-year-old wild pear tree, Russia Dock Woodland. Someone's even put a photo in there. Norton Park. There's trees to celebrate that remain in our memories for long times. We're reaching the last poet before we take a short break, so you'll be able to go to the toilet or perhaps get a gin and tonic or something even stronger, who knows. This last poet lives in East London and has worked internationally. He plays music sometimes, closes the windows if he remembers, but the rest of the time he is probably writing half-decent poems. It is, of course, Chris Cunningham. Chris, how you doing?
Thank you, Arji, very well. And so just to tell you a little about the poem Onlooker, it's written from my experience of trees in the collective sense. So it doesn't set out to tell a story about a particular tree. These are trees that I've encountered in my own recent lockdown walks. I'm lucky to live in part of East London where there are a lot of parks and trees along canal paths, along our residential streets, of course. And so what it tries to do is bring together that overall experience that I've had in this past few months. So Onlooker. The bark could scratch initials onto skin so that it would be a year on, and then some more, laying upon the layers beneath like a Rosetta Stone that was made entirely from its memory. A year on that could not record a story that had hardly begun, rested up against its great trunk. Old treasure chest of news slips time between fingers and sky, changes from moon to sun with a voice whose kind is in the strength of the listening ear, for a chattering squirrel to know and moths to find their place, with its making of the leaf to turn as the marker of every year. The question, or what shape it has in human form, replies to map and day pack and a lolling can drained of drink besides. Is seeing better with glasses on or off against darkened skies? These words, you see, are the shadows of trees, like a flat pack of wolves anticipating their assembly, while other animal scent stays its move. A yawn, bickering, a play, but whose eyes crack with the light between close branches. It doesn't matter when the hunt for the record of a once upon a time wished upon itself. It's all here, here, and here, in this uncoiling of the spring again. Imagine that alongside the chewed grief of a mouthful of earth stood time's keepsake that could carve its ladder out of a breath. Imagine in the flowering canopy is the myriad moment of rebirth.
Chris, that was really wonderful. There's some absolutely blistering images in there. Is it an old poem? Tell the truth.
No, it was written a couple of months ago.
That's so nice. How did you find how did you find the lockdown period for writing? Was it good or was it difficult?
Well, actually, it's you know, a very good question, and I found it, you know, set off a lot of train of thought. Some of them, I have to say, quite political, and others much more reflective. Like, I think that poem is.
Yeah, I felt that side of it, and throughout all the work, I think there's a lot of reflection, and perhaps that's partly to do with the time, and partly to do with trees in general, in that they give us the space to think. And you're going to have the space to think now because I'm going to give you 7 minutes to go to the toilet, maybe make a cup of tea or something much stronger, and rejoin us as we go through another 8 authors. But better than that, we'll be finding out who the winners are. So don't be one of those people who leaves and then I'll announce your name and then there'll be that embarrassing moment where I'll be like, and I'll have to look it up in this book. I'll see you at 25 past 5. See you later, everyone, for part 2. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for coming back and joining us on this auspicious occasion to celebrate Canopy, the coming together of writers, short story writers, flash fiction, as well as poets. All of you are prize winners, but also the people who just came to come down and have a look and have a listen to some poems. We appreciate you as well. It's a good time to say thank you to all the people involved. Alban Lowe, who's from the publishers, and the winner of today is obviously going to be published in a small pamphlet. That's a real lucky and amazing prize. We'd also like to thank Samantha Walton, Gazel Mossadegh, Nigel Bristow, and Rebecca Latin-Warstone for putting together and helping to put together the choices, and also editing it and putting it into a booklet, which is a lovely thing to have. But before we carry on, also, he's not here yet. He might be in the toilet or something. But we should thank Andrew Stuck, because Andrew is, I know how passionate he is, because when he sent me a breakdown, he sent me a lot of information, which is what you want as someone who's going to host something. But he's put a lot of work into making this festival a thing. So we should put our hands together and give him a round of applause. He's probably going to appear and not know about it, which is fine. There he is. That's it, fashionably late. Brilliant. We're into the second half. Thanks very much for being a part of this. I'm going to read a poem. It's a lockdown poem, and I wrote it, and it got it did well for itself with the National Poetry Prize. So I thought I would read it just before we start the second half. It's called Ways of Saying I Love You. My family is a garland untied along the pavement, each member a flower shaking as though a bird just landed and flew away. But it isn't a bird, it is my uncle in a hearse. No one saw him, but they say he passed. How do you say I'm sorry without a hand on a shoulder? How does Appa say I love you without a cross on a forehead? We are items in lost property, mulling in what nows. I want to tell my mum how much I think about her, but talk about my poems and the weather. As we leave, she hands me a bag of Tupperware, warns me to keep it upright. It sits in the back seat, belted up, sobbing curry all the way home. A scent clings to my suit like wishing I had said something. My girlfriend asked me why I'm quiet, but I cannot find the words myself, like I couldn't find the words, so I roll all the windows up and breathe in. Let the aroma fill my lungs like the Tupperware fills every tray in my fridge, even after we've eaten most of it. I want to ring my mum to tell her how much I love her, but settle for texting. The mutton rolls were banging, Mum. She tells me to store some in the freezer for another day. They sit there all year. I don't have the courage to eat them. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening so intently. We are going to an author, a political economist and campaigner. He is co-director of the New Weather Institute and coordinator of the Rapid Transition Alliance. He is, of course, Andrew Sims. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm doing so much better for listening to your poem. That was really beautiful. And as they say, how does one follow that? I don't think I can.
I'm sure you're going to do great, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm quite pleased also that I can see there's still the same number of participants as there were before the break. You do always worry that when there's a break, it's like second half of the theatre, the stalls are empty. So very nice to see everyone. And I wanted to say sort of thank you to the Urban Tree Festival, because I've spent a lot of years writing a lot of words, publishing a lot of words, but all of the non-fiction variety that require footnotes. So actually straying into this area, it took the Urban Tree Festival to push me over the edge and shed a bit of light in public on some actual fiction, and that was really rather, that was a very nice thing. And through all the work I've done over the years on things like climate change, economic justice, international development, I think the conclusion that I've come to, and one of the reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about this, is that real progress will come through a re-enchantment with nature, and a re-enchantment with nature in urban places. And trees, what better place to start? How astonishing they are, and how is it that we're still learning so much about them? I mean, we all know the stuff about the Wood Wide Web, but who knew until a couple of weeks ago that trees can hear their pollinators through their flowers, and in hearing them, sweeten their nectar to be more attractive? Who knew that they could share and trade food with each other? Who knew that the lessons learned by individual trees can be passed on to younger trees? That's a one-up on some human societies, I think, that they can recognize their offspring and nurture them. And literally mind-blowing of all, that they've got a kind of a group sensory biological neural network that resembles a brain, and they use some of the same chemical signals to send information as people do, quotes the scientists, which bears all the hallmarks of intelligence. So amazing things. And that's before we even get to how they own their landscape and the climate and clean air benefits, and just really how they make you feel good. And the other thing which made me feel good, and then I'll read the poem, was all these writers got together last week. I'd never done a writer's workshop before. It was such fun. We talked about writing, I've never done that before, and I wrote a poem which I'm going to post in the chat later off the back of that, and that's a thank you to the other writers. So this poem, I mentioned, is in South London. It's about Tooting Common. Tooting Common may not be glamorous, but it is glorious, and it's where trees hang out near me. So this is called On the Common. A tree flames green from seed, parting surprised earth, unfolds upwards, warmth drawn, no idea of the delicious sunlight yet to lick its leaves, or first stem tickle of ants, shock at skin gone hard, rings wrinkling outwards until birds perch, and worse. Late one spring, above a hedge, the horizon it did not suspect rises, and this sapling wants to sing. Then the indignant sting of autumn's wind whip, the lush hush of winter, novel weight of snow. How could it know a knife would carve letters, smarting its bark in a curious act of love? Or the way shade made unexpected friends, generations born and buried beneath reaching boughs? The tree's life, though, seems endless. Everything arrives in surprise because youth cannot imagine age, realize its own ungnarled incompleteness. Only flounder forward, woody-eyed, amazed, like all the lives that went before.
Thank you, Andrew. That was brilliant. And it's so nice to hear that about going to a writing workshop and getting so much out of it. It is lovely to go to a writing workshop. And that's what's great about these festivals. And if you're a writer out there now and you're just listening and you're thinking, oh, maybe I could do that sometime, get involved, because the best thing about having a scene that is as small as the flash fiction or the poetry scene is that if you get part of it, you can become part of a community quickly. And that's what's really great about it. And that's really lovely. Thank you, Andrew, so much for that. We're moving on to someone who was originally from London, somewhat patchy CV, includes a tiny bit of writing, some talking to trees and working with wood. It is a gentleman called Tom Raw. Tom, are you there?
Hi, yes, hi. Well, just to pick up on what you were just saying, Arji, this is the first proper bit of creative writing I've done in probably 15 years or so. I did a lot in my 20s. Yeah, I saw this competition. I wasn't even looking for it. The algorithms of Instagram led me to it, and I thought, well, I'll just have a go. And now I'm here, which is fantastic. So yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and yeah, so like Andrew, it's the first time for me last week as well, and I'd like to thank the festival as well, because it's been a great experience. So the story is all basically true. It's about near where I live in Toronto, and I guess what led me to think I could have a go when I saw the competition was the experience of the lockdown, which is the same for all of us here, I'm sure, and literally millions of people around the world, of not leaving just a few streets around my house, and which luckily has this one very nice little park in it, was very intense and very vivid, and that obviously sort of wanted an outlet. So when I saw the writing competition, then it sort of came together. Anyway, so I'll read it now. The wild beneath. Near my house in Toronto is a small park, hemmed in by tower blocks and houses, a subway line on one side, a busy road on another. In it are packed a baseball diamond, tennis courts, a playground, a shallow children's pool filled daily in summer, an area of neatly spaced young trees, mostly maple, shade for picnickers. And at the back, something else. In an unkempt corner, up against the mishmash of backyard fences, a larger, messier-looking tree, a vast willow. By its base, a gentle indentation in the grass sweeps away, barely noticed, meandering gently. The ghost of a little stream, perhaps. Willows like to have their roots in running water. The indentation stops abruptly at the playground, but there a second huge willow looms over the climbing frame. Beyond it, toward the subway line, a third. They mark out the route towards the River Don and Lake Ontario, eventually the Atlantic. I visit this place daily now. It has become my routine, ritual, in fact, to pause by the base of the willow, on the bank of the stream that's no more, and thank the tree. Thank it for putting up with my incursion into its home. Thank it for making me think what this place might once have been and what it might be in years to come. Sometimes there I sense something else, a hint of something older, wilder, less impassive than the aging willows. I thank it too.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
That's really brilliant to hear, and it's brilliant to hear that you just started. It doesn't, like, that's the great thing about writing. It's all types of journey that gets us to there, and it's really beautiful to hear you speak. It's concrete poems, Andrew. That's the type of poetry which is in a shape. I loved what Andrew said, and Tom touched on, which is sometimes maybe to save trees and love our planet more, maybe it starts very locally. And also what he said about trees being able to talk. So I want you to think about a tree in your area, and if it could say one thing, what would it say? If you think about a tree in your area and ask yourself, if it could say one thing, what would it say? And put it in the chat window and let me know while I introduce the next poet. Stop driving cars, Andrew says. It's pretty simple, but straight to the point. And I can imagine certain trees that would say something like that. Is there anyone else got any ideas? Get off. Stop stepping on me. Help me. Yes, you beat me to it, Andrew. The other Andrew said. Stop driving cars, I think, is the most popular. I'm going to use that as a somewhat random intro to an illustrator and fantasy writer who's also based in London. She is Georgia Cook, and she's sharing a story called The Trees Near Me. Hi, Georgia.
Hiya, thank you, Arji. So yeah, like you said, I live in London, sort of near where Andrew lives, which is quite spooky. But not around a lot of green stuff. So I wrote my story, The Trees Near Me, about the trees growing from the street outside my flat, which are these big lumpy things that are cut every spring to resemble sort of grasping hands. and I'm fascinated by folklore, and I wanted to use these trees to explore the concept of shifting mythology, what might have happened to our fairy tales had they moved with us into modern times, how they might have adapted or not adapted to being swallowed by city life, just as we have sort of swallowed nature. So here it is. The trees near me. The trees near me aren't trees at all. They appear as trees, reaching up between pavement slabs with their grasping spring-cut fingers, jabbing the air, tumbling leaves and pink apple blossom down across the pavements. But they don't fool me. The trees near me aren't trees at all. They're giants. As I walk between them, I picture wrists winding down beneath the roads, attached to arms the length of tube carriages, shoulders as long as streets. I picture a crowd of subterranean titans, squeezed shoulder to shoulder between basements and subterranean rooms, twisted awkwardly to accommodate the crush. Each breath the rumble of the underground, each shifting movement. Sometimes to scratch a leg, sometimes to work life back into a frozen wrist, the clattering of train tracks. In the time before motorways and skyscrapers, people would see the forms of sleeping giants in mountain valleys and rolling hills. Giants curled against the landscape, worn featureless by time and idleness, their backs flush with moss. Now the giants lie beneath us, tangled with the internal organs of the city, cramped and uncomfortable, their fingers curled towards the sky, the trappings of drowned mythology, dozing fitful London dreams. I know what the trees near me really are. They don't fool me. I know.
Wonderful ending. Thank you so much, Georgia. That was a pleasure to hear. People are saying, I've been here a while. How come you've only just noticed me? Stop owning, parking, driving cars. I like the order in nature of that one, Caroline. Stop eating my flower buds, pigeons. They would pray for us. And even one out of my window says, I like this new picture put up on the wall. And Peter says they're saying, that hoodie's nest is doing my head in. Thanks, Peter, and all the people who joined in on that. We're moving quickly on to that annoying person who wins twice in a competition. You know, it's all right winning once, but when you go twice, it's a bit much, you know. But I already said she's a writer and obviously a talented one because she's got into this twice. And she's reading this time a piece called Lincoln's Inn Fields, and it's Sarah Wheeler. Sarah.
Hi, thanks. I did two pieces because I wanted to do one sort of fact and one fiction to see which did best. So I'm still kind of up in the air over that. This one is a piece that I guess was inspired by my time when I worked in Lincoln's Inn, and when the weather was nice, we'd go and eat sandwiches under the great plane trees there, and it was a great spot for people spotting. And I used to really sort of like to imagine, I guess, the lives that the people around me had. It's called Lincoln's Inn Fields. Don't sit under those trees or you'll stain your dress. Katie squeezes my hand. You all right, she asks. You seem miles away. The others have already flopped onto the lawn, happy as seals basking in the midday sun, a jumble of soft limbs, sandwich wrappers, and scrunched up revision notes. I hesitate before joining the edge of their circle, unable to get Mum's voice out of my head. Even though her warning no longer makes sense. I'm 17 and I haven't worn a dress for years. Not since her funeral, I guess. Tim's here too, laying on his back. He rolls over to face me. Imagine, this used to be all fields. I know, I came here all the time as a kid. Mum was a history teacher, but that's a detail I leave out. Tim reaches out to stroke a gnarl of tree root and his t-shirt rides up, revealing a glimpse of nut brown abs. I love those old London plane trees, don't you? I shrug, deciding it's best not to mention the pollen. He takes my arm, pulling me down until we're laying side by side on the grass. Look up. Silence covers us like shade. Sky so wide and blue it burns my eyes, shines beyond the canopy of tree. When I sit up, I can feel him gently brushing the spores off my back. Mum's voice still there, but softer now. a breath of wind moving through the leaves.
Thank you, Sarah. Wonderful, and it actually goes to show the clarity of your writing, Sarah. It's brilliant, and it's what makes short stories and flash fiction so exciting, that you can follow them with such ease. The next person we're moving on to is an art historian, curator, and writer. Her writing has appeared in Stonecrop Review, Storgy, and was highly commended in the Bridport Prize 2020. So that was during the lockdown, I imagine. It is Rachel Sloan. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Arji. Thanks so much for the lovely intro. Just to say a little bit about what inspired my short story, Daphne. I'm a fairly recent transplant from London to Kent. And during this past year and a bit, one of the places that's really helped me stay sane is Shoreham Woods, where I've gone on many walks. And Shoreham Woods it's a kind of a strange woodland. It is a former ancient woodland that was mostly cut down in the early 20th century and replanted. So most of the trees in it are quite young, but there's a huge old beech tree in the middle of the wood that is obviously much, much older than all the other trees. And it's always really, really intrigued me. So I ended up writing a story about it. So this is Daphne. One night, when the moon is full, 12 village girls, desperate to escape the husbands chosen for them, steal into the beechwood. In a circle they dance, faster and faster, faces washed in moonlight, until some long-forgotten god of moon or earth or forest takes pity on them, and their feet take root, their bodies fuse into a single column, their arms writhe skyward, sprouting leaves. Flesh turns to wood, blood to sap, and iron-gray bark swarms over them, covering their heads, but failing to absorb them entirely. Centuries pass. London swallows the village. A road slices the wood in two, and the Forestry Commission parcels off what remains. But as tree after tree topples under the whining saw, they refuse to touch the giant beech that stands alone in a clearing, its serpentine limbs and roots stretching in all directions, its trunk studded with 12 knots the size of heads. The official line is that the trunk is misshapen and will produce faulty timber. No one will admit the true reason, that in certain lights, traces of a nose, a brow, a cheekbone, a chin can be seen in the knots. That if you press your ear to the bark and listen hard enough, you'll hear the beat, faint but steady, of 12 hearts.
Really wonderful. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing that. And the background as well helped engage with the poem. Really enjoyable. Thank you. We're on to a poet. He's a fencing contractor, an estate worker who lives in Inner Hebrides. And it is, of course, Peter Isaacson. Peter. Oh, this might be the first person not to be here. It's okay. Andrew, shall we miss Peter out because he's not here?
Yeah, I guess so. And I think we should go on, and he might turn up. And
yeah, no worries. I'll come back to it if he's there.
He was here. He was here. He's here now. He's listed as being here.
Oh right, okay. Well, maybe he fell asleep. I'm here, but no sound. Well, we could watch you do a mime version, Peter. I'm not sure whether it will be as good. I'll tell you what. I'll have a look at the poem and try to read it in a bit.
Yeah.
But Peter, thanks for being present. Let's move to another person who's had two, I'm pretty sure. It's E.E. Rhodes reading a story called Counting Cherry Stones. Are you there, E.E. Rhodes?
I am, Arji, thank you.
No worries.
So this is a flash as opposed to a piece of poetry. I put two pieces in because I thought I've not submitted poetry anywhere before, and it would be nice to submit some poetry. But I really wanted to submit a flash about cherry trees. And it's inspired sort of by four different sorts of cherry tree. One was the cherry tree that I grew up with in the garden of my parents' house, which is still there and which I missed both blooming seasons in spring this year and last year. One is a cherry tree that we can see from our house in Cardiff, which I did see last year, but not this year. And here where we are in Worcestershire, I can see a cherry tree from the kitchen window, which is fantastic. But really, this story is based in the Lebanon, in a town just outside, just on the edges of Beirut, where I used to work. I'm an archaeologist now, but I used to work in peace and conflict transformation and development. So this is based on a number of people's stories about their cherry trees. Counting cherry stones. Outside our apartment block, there is a wild cherry tree in an oil drum. I pass 6 more on my walk to school. I start out alone, but someone is waiting at each tree. Mina, Mariam, Lydia, Mira, Timur, Frank. We skip along, singing, not enough to annoy anyone, just counting all the trees. I bury 6 cherry stones on the walk home every day, whispering my friends' names aloud, pushing the stones deep into the gritty soil between the blown out buildings. A single stone planted for each of them, so all my friends will be safe overnight and always. I think they do the same for me. One sequestering night, my family flees those streets with the wild cherry trees. On the cell phone screen, at a great distance, I watch rubble growing, where once there were all our small domesticities. I go back as an adult eventually, a paper in my passport permitting my return. I tried to retrace the route from school, but it's nearly impossible. Not because of the derelict buildings, but because of the cherry trees crowding the wasteland, their clusters of fruit hanging like 1,000,000 jeweled lanterns. At our shell-struck apartment, the old cherry tree in the oil drum has survived undiminished. Mina and Lydia are waiting for me too. In the shade of the tree, the 3 of us eat handfuls of sweet, wild cherries. Then, in silence, we bury the stones for our 4 friends who are gone.
Thank you so much. Thanks for both of your pieces. Really, really good. Andrew, you got to mute just because it sounds like a cockroach scurrying up a wall, which is fine. I'm going to read Peter Isaacson's piece. Peter, if you put a backstory of some sort into the chat, that would be quite interesting. I hope I don't butcher your piece. Okay. Hebridean Christmas tree. What is this striated wooden giant? Broken branches hanging with seaweed and plastic, trunk bored through and through by shipworms, sharp chiseling teredos. Normally speaking, this would be a dead whale. We have dead whales, we don't have trees. Trees cannot withstand our withering salty blast. Like us, they can cower briefly behind a wall, but they cry themselves to death, corroding half an inch above the cover. Nothing thrives outside June and July here. By August, the sea and the winter wind grind back in again, and now it is Christmas, Yule. the season where we are trying to believe in hope, the message of the evergreen. And here it lies, Pinus contorta, says my phone, uprooted by rude force and cast adrift to drown and cross the Atlantic. Somewhere out there is a land of wonder where trees come from. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Peter, and sorry we couldn't get sound from you today. We're on to the final one before we have the exciting decision-making time. Let's go to Leicestershire, where a lady who loves exploring the British countryside with a flask of coffee is waiting. She's going to be reading a piece called Giving Thanks. It's Charis Fox.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can actually.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. My inspiration was a green space, quite a huge expanse of woodlands and meadows that somehow tucked away in the city. And it was just somewhere I would go to escape during the first lockdown, a bit of a break from everything. And yeah, just the appreciation of having these spaces to go to. So yeah, this is Giving Thanks. Start between cars, seeping unseen smog. Hold my breath by lorries coughing clouds of rusty smoke. Turn left through a gap between brick buildings. Cross the stone bridge spanning a river clogged with beer cans and face masks. Tarmac gives way to earth. Oaks, sycamores, birch, aspen, wait eternally. Follow the hum of bees to my hiding place beneath the boughs of the common lime. The words disclose as much about her as Homo sapien reveals about me. They don't tell the passerby that she has known this woodland for 100 years, when pine martins and dormice were abundant and ghost orchids still appeared like jewels beneath the canopy. Before we laid claim, choking, slicing her home into a sliver of what it once was. Yet still she stands poised in meditation, arms reaching towards the sun, lower limbs brushing blades of grass. Cradled in her roots, with the parasitic presence of the missing piece, swelling, seizing every part of me, I have shaken and cried and asked why. In response, I have heard blackbirds trill, leaves shiver. I have followed ants disappearing into cracks I could not see from standing. I have felt sunlight dance between branches. I have breathed. Today, a joyless confetti of coloured foil wrappers lie scattered over her roots. I pluck the discarded responsibilities of others and hold them in my pocket. Sink into a carpet of grass, humus, leaves the colour of unripe pears. Inhale the perfume of rain-moistened moss and give thanks.
Wonderful way to end it, Charis. Thank you so much. And thank you, Tamsin, for reminding me that I didn't mute when I was messaging Andrew. And Andrew was messaging me when he didn't mute. So we're together typing without muting. We've reached the end, guys. Give everybody a big round of applause because it's been wonderful to be here. Community of writers. It's not about the winning necessarily. It's about the celebrating of good work and of progress, because all of our writing is progress happening. The runners-up of this prize will receive an artwork illustrating their piece, which is actually quite an awesome, brilliant prize. So I'm going to announce the runners up now. In the poetry category, the runner up is E.E. Rhodes for Dodionol at Feel. Give a round of applause. I think they did that just because I had to then pronounce the poem name again.
I think they did as well.
Congratulations. Yeah, you're going to get an image of your piece, which is lovely. Thanks so much. And in the prose category, the runner-up is Rachel Sloan, which we recently heard, Daphne, her story. Well done, Rachel. Brilliant. And This is all made possible due to the funding of the Mayor of London. The winner of each category will receive the opportunity to have an illustrated chapbook of their own work, which is brought forward by Samson Low Publishers. It's a hell of an accolade, and they'll also receive the other accolade of being the writer in residence for 2022 Urban Tree Festival. I guess that means they're going to like create or deliver poems throughout the festival, but I'm sure Andrew has got a plan or is currently jotting one down as I speak, which gives me great pleasure to announce the winner. I'm going to pretend to open up an envelope. The winner of the Urban Tree Festival writing competition in the poetry category is Chris Cunningham for his poem Onlooker. Chris, how you doing?
Astonished. But no, I mean, how great to take part in such an important festival at this time. And to me, all the poems, all the prose won.
Thanks, Chris. Do we get to hear the poem just one more time? Onlooker.
Sure. Here we go. Onlooker. The bark could scratch initials onto skin so that it would be a year on, and then some more, lain upon the layers beneath like a Rosetta Stone that was made entirely from its memory. A year on that could not record a story that had hardly begun, rested up against its great trunk. Old treasure chest of news slips time between fingers and sky, changes from moon to sun with a voice whose kind is in the strength of the listening ear for a chattering squirrel to know and moths to find their place, with its making of the leaf to turn as the marker of every year. The question, or what shape it has in human form, replies to map and day pack and a lolling can, drained of drink besides. Is seeing better with glasses on or off against darkened skies? These words you see are the shadows of trees, like a flat pack of wolves anticipating their assembly, while other animals' scent stays its move. A yawn, bickering, a play, but whose eyes crack with the light between close branches. It doesn't matter when the hunt for the record of a once upon a time wished upon itself. It's all here, here, and here, in this uncoiling of the spring again. Imagine that alongside the chewed grief of a mouthful of earth stood time's keepsake that could carve its ladder out of a breath. Imagine in the flowering canopy is the myriad moment of rebirth.
Wonderful, Chris, the poetry category winner. Such a pleasure to hear that again, and to have you here to read it live as well. We're moving on to the winner of the Urban Tree Festival writing competition in the prose category. She had two pieces, and this one was for My Blackthorn is a Tree. It is, of course, the wonderful Sarah Wheeler. Sarah, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. Thank you.
We'd really love to hear it as the final piece for tonight.
Thank you. My blackthorn is a tree. It's not a tree. Other half is adamant. It's a bush. Wiki proves unhelpful. Height and girth, it seems, only get you so far. Defining tree is a complicated matter. Other half thinks he's clinched it though, courtesy of Alan Sibley, a dendrologist he's just met on Google. If you can walk under it, it's a tree. If you have to walk around it, it's a shrub. He points at blackthorn, barely distinguishable from the rampant undergrowth, and laughs, a little too hard. Try walking under that. Difficult, I admit. In winter, blackthorn looks more like a badly constructed bonfire than a tree, unlike solitary oak, regal even when naked, or serpentine yew curled round a rusty stake in the churchyard, both silent witnesses of history and both undisputedly trees. Refashioned, blackthorn never became a ship's beam, nor curved into a bow pierced any hearts at Agincourt. A remnant of ancient hedge, it squats in a no man's land of scrub and brambles, a guest who's outstayed his welcome. It's blackthorn, though, which greets me every morning, marking the passage of my year. Pinhead blossom merging with the vestiges of frost, branches heavy with a surfeit of berries as summer wanes, then velveteen sloes, bitter sweet with the promise of winter firesides and woody gin. Why does it matter anyway? Other half asks after 60 seconds of stony silence. I don't know, unable to articulate how deeply blackthorn roots me to this place. I shrug, it just does.
Once again, for Sarah Hill-Wheeler.
Thank you.
It's really, really brilliant, and actually, you could sort of feel the air change when a really good piece is read, and that was really, really enjoyable. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and being a part of this event. I think every year they bring on this festival so you can apply or enter in a piece next year. It's been really wonderful to see you all and to hear about new writers as well as writers who've been doing it a long time. Andrew, thanks for having me.
Well, I have to say a big thank you to Arji, because he really took a huge weight off my shoulders, and he also performed 2 wonderful poems, which I think were really good, and a worthy winner himself of a National Poetry Prize. I think he's been fantastic today, so kind of a waggly round of applause for Arji. And Arji, where can we find out where we can buy your poetry?
Yeah, I'm published on Outspoken Press, and the book's called Mutton Rolls. I'll put it in the chat. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so it's sort of kind of wrap up time. So, well, you know, that's amazing. And it's been a really lovely afternoon. And thank you so much for sort of topping off the end of the Urban Tree Festival. Although the British Library have snuck in and they've got another event later on this evening, would you believe it, which is a kind of games jam, but I've kind of missed out on that. But anyway, that's one side of it. Obviously, we've got to thank the authors who took part today, and some of whom, you know, as we heard, were fairly new writers, and others who are accomplished and well established. So a really thank you very much for submitting your work when you did, and you know, everybody else who really took part in the event. And if you want to get involved, as Arji mentioned, we're going to be running the 2022 Urban Tree Festival again in May, probably. It's obviously not set yet. We'll be running the writing competition from February onwards, and we would love people to take part. And the basic idea is you just have to get something down on paper in less than or fewer than 250 words. Now, I've said that, and there is someone who is in the meeting and hasn't been sort of given a shout out for, and that's NG Bristow. So I'm hoping that Nigel is still here, because he's the he's one of the story judges, and I don't know whether he's waving or not, because I can't see him. But has he run off? Maybe he's run off. He's
no. I'm waving. not running.
Not waving or drowning. Anyway, Nigel is actually the person who came up with the idea of running a flash fiction competition, and so you have to kind of blame him, and that's or congratulate him, and that's one of the things that I can now sort of get him to volunteer to be a judge forever and ever, because he put it all together. So a big thank you to Nigel, and a special thank you to Alban Lowe. He's not actually here. He's the artist and he's also the publisher at Sampson Lowe Publishing. So a big thank you to him, and a big thank you again to Rebecca, who not only judged the stories with Nigel, but also edited the anthology as she did last year. What we'd love you to do is buy both copies in the bundle. But if you haven't yet bought Canopy this year, then please go to the Urban Tree Festival shop on the website and bag a copy, because they're limited editions. Once they're gone, we don't reprint. So yeah, please go and grab a copy. Okay, so I just want to do a quick sort of roundup of thank yous, because there are still a few more left. Most importantly, the Mayor of London, because the Mayor of London have done a fantastic job for us and gave us the resources to create the prize, which was really special for us. I want to thank Trees for Cities, which is a charity that's actually supported the Urban Tree Festival from our beginning in 2018. We crowdfunded to create the Urban Tree Festival, and they matched every pledge. So that was really, really important for us. They actually had to drop out last year because of the pandemic and the crisis that hit many charities, but they're back supporting us again this year. And we also want to mention that we've actually got a new supporter who's investing in us for the next few years, and that's the Woodland Trust. So we're sort of, we're beginning to gather momentum, and we're beginning to establish ourselves not just in London, but in other parts of the country. And last but by no means least, I want to extend a big thank you to my colleagues on the steering group, who are all volunteers. Plus, we have a slew of students who help us put things together, get things onto the website, generate social media, drive traffic to the website. Some of them are work placement students who are undergraduates at Goldsmiths. Others are graduate students in event management at Napier in Scotland. That's kind of how it works now on the internet. You can recruit people from all over the place. We also have some real die-hard volunteers who come and help us each festival, one of whom we must flag up is Caroline Bourne. She's been absolutely incredible. She writes our daily news letters. She also does our Facebook, and she's one of our media people who really help us. And we've had a couple of other volunteers who've put their hands up as well. So this really is it. Have a really lovely evening. I was about to say enjoy the rest of the festival, but there's only the British Library Games Jam to go. So if you want to sign up for that, I think you still have time. But otherwise, we welcome you back next year. And in the meantime, get out and enjoy those trees. Thanks very much. And a big thank you once again to Arji. I think you did a fantastic job. Bye, everyone.